You're 19 years old, and it's your third day in a maximum security prison back in the 70s. Let me share a story with you what happened. My male mentor, who had trained me for the last few days, said, when you go into the unit to serve the breakfast, you have to count the spoons. It was maximum security, you only got a spoon to eat with. He said, if you don't get them all back out, they could find them broken and a shiv in your back tomorrow. Have you got it? So then I went in and I pushed the big meal wagon in, just like you see in the hospitals, and I positioned it properly in the unit. And I had never stepped across the threshold yet, and it was just like everything you see on Prison Break. And I was nervous. And so I started opening the cell doors and handing out the spoons. And by the third one that I handed out, I looked down and I realized they were all coming out naked. They hadn't done it to him, but they were doing it to me. I mean, I hadn't even seen a real live one yet. I was saying, think like a nurse or a doctor. Think like a nurse or a doctor. By about the 12th one that came out, they even started a few shimmies. I didn't know what to do. It was back in the 70s where they were just putting women in non-traditional male roles and vice versa. I thought it was my great grades. I was meeting a quota. And I was going to quit that night. I went home and I thought, you know what? They're right. I don't belong. And I wrote up my resignation letter. And in the morning, I woke up with a different resolve. I thought, maybe I just need different tactics than men. Maybe what they can do, I'm not allowed to, and I just have to find my own way. You see, the male officer with no problem would have said, Smith, get back in your cell and get your pants on. And if I had done that, they would have said, ooh, how can we get her tomorrow? So this is what I did. I went in the unit, pushed the meal wagon back in, armed with my spoons. I kicked on each cell door and said, if you'd like breakfast, get up and get dressed. If you'd like breakfast, get up and get dressed. If you'd like breakfast, get up and get dressed. By the time I came back around to the first cell, they were all dressed. And they never came out naked again in front of me for the next 4 years. The first technique for women in the book is set expectations up front. Without disdain, without anger, without contempt, just tell people what you need. The topic I'm most passionate about is I can fix that. What I realize about human behavior is we have an innate need for attachment. And whenever we have conflicts, that innate need is disrupted or disconnected. And I've watched too many organizations fall apart or are in strife or conflict. They're in conflict then internally, they're then in conflict with their customers. And so I keynote and I speak on teaching people how to find resolve.
There's no question that men and women are wired differently. There's some earth-shattering news for you, and they also think differently too. So why should women in business try to emulate men and their leadership styles? Here to talk about this is Elaine Allison, the author of The Velvet Hammer, Powerful Leadership Lessons for Women Who Don't Golf. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Absolutely fascinating book.
In leadership, women have almost a double standard. If they're too forthright or a hammer, like they get deemed that B word, and if they're too nurturing, which is their natural state, they can often get deemed weak. So the Velvet Hammer is helping women to lead with grace and eloquence, but still the ability to get things done. So one of the things I teach is, where does conflict come from? And there's basically only one thing. I use 3 words, but it basically, in essence, is the same thing. And the only thing that causes conflict, whether it's the one you just had yesterday with a family member or a colleague or your boss, is that your goals, expectations, or objectives were different than the other person. And the nanosecond that that happens, what you wanted was different than what I wanted, bang, we're in conflict. So I have an exercise where they actually have to think of their last conflict and write down what is it the other person wanted, what was it they wanted, and actually acknowledge where the differences actually lie. And then they draw a line, and it's not their way and not my way, but they have to find a third way. Now often a person will put a suggestion on the table and the person says, no way, that'll never work. Well, the two most magic words that I teach is then say, what else? What else? And keep going until you come down to meet something that meets both people's interests. I teach when I keynote. I don't necessarily speak in platitudes or do one, do two, do three. I actually take people through exercises and scenarios where they're working on their thing, their stuff, and give them the scripts, and they actually have an opportunity to model that back before they leave the session. I have my formal education in curriculum design and adult ed, so not only am I a keynoter with the great stories and the points to make, I reach in at a visceral level and literally shake up your thinking so that you leave the next day with a skill that actually can be applicable tomorrow. Basically, I'm there to teach. And I literally work with the organizers or the corporation and say, what behaviors do you want changed as a result of this? And when I work with an organization, I go really deep into finding out what's wrong, what do you need help with, where are your greatest challenges? And then I design the modules and the key points, whether it's 45 minutes or an hour, helping their organization. I interview at the senior level, at the mid-level, and the frontline level. And we put those together and come up with the skills that they actually need that's going to help them tomorrow.
Elaine brings across a great energy and enthusiasm. She's incredibly knowledgeable about what she teaches, and she has a big finish.
She came to us highly referred, and she's put us through customer service training, some conflict resolution work with our customer service staff, and she's done a fantastic job. She's been in the field herself. She's come from the airline industry. She's also worked in corrections herself, so she's been there and done that, so she has a real connection with the staff.
Elaine is the light of the room. Like, she just stands out. Everything you say, you're captured by what she's saying. You're listening to her. She's just demands attention without demanding it, if you know what I mean. So Elaine is great.
The first part of the project was to provide a customer care training program for the airport, and that reached out to over 3,500 people in well over 40 companies. The second part of the project was to help us get our game face on for the Olympics. So to motivate us, get us energized and focused at serving the customer well during the Olympics. As judged by the audience loved it. They said they loved it. Their scores reflected that. And we saw that not only just in scores, but in terms of the objectives it achieved in seeing behavioral change as a result of the learning outcomes.
The most wonderful thing I get is the emails afterwards where they said, wow, I just tried that technique today and it worked, and this person did this and I didn't have to do anything, it's just changed my approach. And those are the ones I love, and I get such a kick out of knowing I helped them, and I hope I've left them with hope that these things can be solved, and when they do and I get the email, it's just a great day.